Hey everyone, Nick here. So in 2022, my wife and I finally, after over a year and a half of searching, found an awesome property that we bought and moved to. And I wanted to make a video to tell you about how our process went for us, some of the things that we learned along the way, so that if you're in the same position as we were, you have a leg up on and you can capitalize on our lessons learned. So I'll give you a little bit of background as to kind of who we are and where we came from. So we lived outside of major U.S. cities. We're both city folks. My wife and I grew up in the city. Always lived around like the suburbs or downtown. And when we began the search, we were living, outside of a major U.S. city. I mean, we got zero farming experience. Like, we never even been close to a chicken. Um, but anyway, so we wanted to get some land, get like 5 or 10 acres somewhere, 2 3 hours outside of town that we can just use for recreation. Right? The idea was that we would go there on weekends. Maybe if it's like a long weekend, we'd go out there and do some camping, and maybe get a little garden going, plant some fruit and nut trees. Ideally, it would be like a lake or a creek where we can do some fishing, and just use that land just to kind of hang out. Maybe build a small little cabin, but mainly just recreational uses. So to search for land, what I do is I go on Zillow, and I had my target kind of areas in mind. I had my saved searches, and I just kind of scope out the area online. And then if I liked it, I would call the listing agent. I didn't have a buyer's agent then, and then I would get some more information about the property, and then take a trip out there. And let me tell you, I got old real quick because that's kind of a heavy investment of time. You have to take about half a day of work, right? You got to drive out there for 2 hours, probably drive back for about 2 hours. You'll probably spend some time there walking around. Um, that's I don't know, I think it's a pretty heavy investment just to check out some land. And one thing that I found, it is very hard to find buyers agents to actually work with you unless you're willing to spend a whole bunch of money. So what I learned to do early on is vet the property online as much as possible before actually making the trip to check it out. All right, establish some hard criteria for yourself, and if it doesn't meet any of those criteria, like, you're just not even going to go see it. Save yourself the time, the gas, um, and instead of focus on the properties that will actually meet your requirements. And it'll take time, but you'll end up wasting a lot less time, and it'll be a lot less burnout for you in terms of looking for these places. So then I started doing a lot more digging online, and specifically, here's what I would recommend doing. Number one is the terrain and the landscape of the property. It's hard to tell by looking at the pictures how steep the property is or what the terrain looks like. So on Google Maps, there's a handy feature that you can select and look at the terrain map. And if you get the zooming level just right, you might have to play with it. Use the scroll wheel to like zoom in and out. You will get the topographical lines that will go and will show you what the elevation points are. Use that to check on each property before you go out to look at it. Because some properties may look nice and they'd be cheap, but then they will just be extremely steep, and you're not going to be able to really build something on them or have any kind of like animals, or that land is just not very usable, right? I mean, you might be able to put a small cabin in there, but it might not be it wasn't what we were looking for. Another thing to check online, assuming that criteria is met, is the elevation of a property. We were looking at something at least 1,000 feet up, because I think there are some areas that are really prone to flooding, and we wanted to avoid that. And so, that was kind of our criteria. And while looking at elevation, also pay attention to what is around your property, right? So, for example, the property may be high up in the mountains, but it might be at the bottom of a mountain, right? So if it does rain a lot, that's where the water is going to pool, which is something that you want to avoid. Ideally, you want your property to be like halfway up on some kind of a hill, right? So that there's some water running through your property, but it doesn't pool in any specific areas, right? So that was an important lesson, and that ended up weeding out a lot of properties online right off the bat. Another thing to check out is there's a website called AcreValue that gives you very handy information about land, right? So you can punch in the plot location, and then you can see who owns the adjacent parcels, right? So you can get an idea of what your neighbors are like, right? And what I would look for is I would make sure that there's large chunks of continuous land around me. It's not a deal breaker, but that's ideal, right? I mean, you want your land to back up to, let's say, national park land, or somebody who owns like thousands of acres, right? Because again, they're probably not going to be selling it, so you're not going to have a lot of turnover. It's probably going to stay like that, right? If you have a bunch of smaller plots, people may be moving in and out, and you might get some new neighbors and things like this, right? So just something to watch out for. So then I had my criteria established. I was looking online, um, and it cut down on my trips quite a bit. But we were still going out and looking at properties around. And as we kind of drove around through some of these areas, we just thought that it should be kind of nice to live out here, right? And so we ended up maybe modifying our search a little bit, and instead of looking just for some recreational land, we started thinking about maybe we should actually like just move out here, right? And there's a couple of factors that actually played into that as well. So we had our budget for land, but as we kind of looked at land, we realized that maybe we wanted more than just like 5 or 10 acres, right? We wanted to just kind of spread out and maybe expand in the future. And we didn't really have the budget for that. And you can take a loan out, you can take a recreational land loan out that people get for hunting, but be prepared to put in a pretty heavy down payment, right? You'll put in, depending on the size of a lot, the down payment requirements vary, at least the lender that we got pre-approved with. And then, so if you wanted to go, let's say 30 or 40 acres, these guys would lend us the money, but it would take up pretty much all the money that we had to go for the down payment for that. And there were other costs that we were going to incur as part of this, like actually developing this land. So we didn't want to blow all the money just on the down payment, right? Because if you're buying just regular land, you're going to need to clear the land. You're going to need to install some kind of a septic system. You're going to need to drill a well so that you can have water. If you're serious about having some kind of a, remote location and actually being able to stay there for, longer than a weekend. And so all these things factored in. We thought, well, maybe we can just buy a house with a large lot, right? Get like some kind of a farm, and that way we can get like a regular loan and get the land with it. So then we expanded our search and we expanded the areas we were looking at, and now we were looking for houses that we can get like a regular conventional loan for, with a bunch of land. So now we were looking for a house. Now, land was still an option, but it was kind of like on the back burner. One of the things we needed to find was a realtor. And I really wish that I have invested more time early on in finding a realtor in the first areas that we're looking for as well. And it's hard to find a realtor unless you're spending a lot of money, because these guys work in commission, right? So they'll get maybe like 3% of a sale. And so let's say you buy something even for $100,000, they're only going to get $3,000. And so, for that amount of money, they're expected to drive around and show you different properties. And it's just hard to find people. It was especially back then when the real estate market was so hot that actually want to work with you. So my advice to you would be, invest some time, ask for references, ask for somebody, ask people if they know a realtor that'll work with you. And once you find one, don't waste their time. And just tell them, like, look, this is my budget. Please set up some MLS searches for me so that I can, get properties right when they hit the market. And then, talk to them on the phone, of course. And then when you really have some properties that you want to see, be prepared to go out and see those properties like next day. One other important thing I learned is that properties hit Zillow maybe like 2 or 3 days after we hit MLS. And so if you have a realtor that can set up those MLS alerts for you in those general areas, you're going to be ahead of the crowd that are only using Zillow. And not only that, but this listing agents will also attach other documentation to the listing that you cannot see on Zillow, right? So they'll attach maybe more detailed maps, different reports, just other information about the property. So that's why you really need a good buyer's agent to to be able to send you those documents for the listings that you're interested in, because otherwise you're not gonna get that. So now we had our realtor, we had the criteria what we were looking for, we had general vicinity, we wanted to be somewhere around the Ozark Plateau, and we started looking at all the MLS listings that were coming our way. And you want to follow the same kind of process you did for land, right? Establish a hard criteria, stuff that you're not willing to sacrifice on. Like if you wanted to have some privacy and you want to have a long driveway, and the property is right next to the main road, no matter how cheap it is, no matter if it meets all your other criteria, don't even waste your time. Don't go look at it. So establish that criteria. It's gonna be different for everybody, but just stick to your guns, and don't waste your time and don't waste the realtor's time on running through these things. And if you're looking for property that's kind of far away from home, maybe like 5 or 6 hours, you want to get even better at evaluating the property online. And if you're looking at houses, get really good at looking at like pictures of properties and better understanding like what the condition of a house is, right? Look for things like, does the house have gutters? Is it propane heated? Like, do you have propane tanks outside? Is it wood heated? Do you have like a central boiler out there? Are there any other buildings on the property that you might see in the background of these pictures? Look at the conditions of fence lines. Again, in the pictures, right? Look at how many air conditioning units there are in there. Look how many chimneys. That can tell you how many fireplaces this house has. So get really good at going through the property and analyzing in detail every single shot. Like the properties that I went to see, there were 3, and I went through the pictures like many times, and you can tell a lot of information if you're very detail oriented by looking at these pictures. Look at, for example, the condition of the kitchen cabinets, or see how old the windows are, right? All these things you can infer by looking at these pictures, without actually having to make the trip, which is super important, because let's say you even drive out there to look at it. Properties, let's say you make a day out of it, right? Each property can be, an hour, 2-3 hours away from each other. So you only have a few shots in a day anyway. So make your time count. So let's say you find a place and you're gonna go out there and you're gonna check it out. So here's what I looked for when I went to look at these properties. First, look at the access road and look at the road that leads up to the property, and see who's gonna be managing that. Is that like a county road, or is that an easement through somebody else's property? Keep in mind that as the weather changes, you might have to drive through different weather conditions. It's not going to be a problem because you're going to probably get a 4-wheel drive truck when you move out here anyway, but just something to think about. And also look at your neighbors and look at what kind of properties they have, and try to imagine yourself living with these people and see if that's what you want. You can get some of that from satellite imagery, but it's always better when you drive through it in person. Then once you get to the property, there's a few things that you want to check, right? So if it has a well, look at the well house, see what the condition of the well house is. Generally, I think if there's any problems, they'll come up with during house inspection, but you definitely want to check that out as well. Look at the trees around the property as well. So I didn't get very good at identifying trees, and that's still something that I'm working on. But one thing I look for evergreen trees around like the perimeter of your property, because if you want some privacy, that'll give you year-round privacy. That'll be great. Other trees that you might want to look for is like apple trees or nut trees, like walnuts. You might want to look for some maple trees. That'll be a huge plus. All these things would add value to your property, especially if there are mature trees that are actually producing fruit. Another thing that's very important is internet access. When I came out to check out this property, I had Verizon and I had 0 bars. I had 0 reception. Now, internet is something important for me because I work from home. My realtor ended up having 1 bar on his AT&T plan. So that was something that was kind of a concern, but I did find a way to get pretty decent internet out of here, and I will make another video about it maybe in the coming weeks. And I will show you how you can even work from home with video calls and streaming Netflix if you just have a couple of bars of service on your phone. But anyway, you definitely need at least a couple of bars, or at least 1. So if you, for example, have a carrier, see what your realtor have and what their reception is, and ask the seller about it as well. There are also apps that you can download on your phone that will give you like relative proximity to GPS towers. Definitely get out on your phone and walk around the property and see what the reception looks like in different areas, and see what that app says regarding like how far you're away from the nearest cell tower. So I think that's about it in a nutshell. I think I'm going to make another video later that has some more information about the things that what to look for when you're looking at a property, and maybe some of the things that I didn't look for that I should have looked at when coming to see a property. But if you have any questions, feel free to drop me a comment. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this information helpful, And please keep me and my family in your prayers. Thank you.